both of these players get the opportunity for this match to check over each other's deck lists. They've been doing that. They have had an opportunity to see not only what's in that main, what's in the sideboard, and they can think ahead. What do I want to do? What do I expect? What do I fear? This is going to help a lot with those discard cards like Cabal Therapy that Sam Black has in his deck.
Turn 1 Faithless Looting from Sam to start the action. And I think that we saw Brian earlier on camera today take care of Josh Cho in a feature match where Loam Wasteland just sort of buried Josh. I suspect this matchup is not particularly good for Brian, as a lot of his reactive elements just aren't very effective against what Sam's doing. Deathrite Shaman is good. The Singleton Pernicious Deed has the potential to be good, but a lot of the rest of his deck, I think, is poorly structured to fight this bizarre attack that Sam will be generating.
One thing he does have, though, 4 Deathrite Shamans could be effective.
Yes, that's the big one he needs, and he has no Shaman on turn 1. Sam Black Faithless Looting discarded Bloodghast and Lingering Souls, so a landfall trigger to bring the Bloodghast back, and now a Tidehollow Sculler.
For those of you who are just joining us, this is the semifinals here of the Legacy Open here at your Star City Games Open Series Invitational Weekend in Los Angeles. The final invitational of the year. Pete Heffling has given away $1 million this year.
Yes.
$1 million, and we're getting to the last little bit of it right now.
Yep. So Brian going to crack that fetch land in response and finds an Underground Sea. This usually signals that we'll be seeing a Brainstorm in response to hide some goodies.
And there's the Brainstorm. You can see a Hymn to Torok in there. Is that 2 Hymn to Toroks?
It looks like a Charlotte's Agent, Abrupt Decay, a Hymn, some action, but it's not clear if it's going to be the right kind of action to stop what Sam's going to be up to this game. Brainstorms into another Abrupt Decay, another Hymn. So I would assume that we want to hide at least one of these Abrupt Decays so we can just untap and kill the Sculler if we're feeling like it.
One of the things that's kind of cool about many of the decks we've seen this weekend, I haven't seen very many Hymns until recently, and it looks like Hymn might be back.
Yeah, well, it's awesome, and certainly in bug control mirrors, it's quite good. It's also just a good thing to have in your deck once you have Charlotte's Agent, because you're almost certainly happy to flip that over to your Charlotte's Agent. A lot of the trick in deck building is making sure that whatever you're going to be flipping over to your Charlotte's Agent is going to be non-conditional value, and Hymn definitely fits that.
I mean, if we looked at Bloodbraid Elf into Blightning, Shardless Agent into Hymn, that feels actually even better,
yes,
despite no haste and no damage.
So we're looking at a hand of Abrupt Decay, Charlotte's Agent, Hymn to Torak, a second Abrupt Decay, and Liliana of the Veil, along with a Polluted Delta and a Forest.
This is early enough in the game that it's going to take 2 more turns before the Shardless Agent will be able to come into effect for the game. What do you take here? I kind of like... Gosh.
The only card that makes sense to me to take here is Hymn.
Yeah.
Because it's the only thing that cuts off any angle. You can't get rid of Abrupt Decay. So, okay.
Sam's playing for the long game.
Well, I think, yeah, I guess my logic there is just you can't stop him from Abrupt Decaying your Tidehollow Sculler, so you might as well prevent him from casting Hymn if he wants to. It's the only way to like disrupt his curve. But Sam might have a sequence here where he's actually happy if that Sculler gets Abrupt Decayed.
And another thing to think about, too, is I don't think we've had a really good look at Sam Black's hand. So
Yeah. I mean, there's so many weird angles that Sam's deck has here that I try not to jump to too many conclusions about what the next line of play should be. Even when I can see his hand, I'm usually... I'm going to let Sam do his thing, and then I'm going to try to go back and explain what I think the logic might have been. I'm not going to try to weigh in too strongly with how I think he should proceed with the action. 4
cards in Sam's hand. Hymn to Torok takes an attempt to knock some good things out of there. It's a reroll. One of the cards is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And finally,
and we are looking at...
And the reveal?
The slow reveal.
It's going to be Bloodghast? Nope.
Undiscovered Paradise, Bloodstained
That
Mire.
was actually probably a really good Hymn to Torok, given how much graveyard, or is it all lands in Sam's hand?
He certainly has one more.
Couldn't quite tell.
I think it's a Verdant Catacomb. Yeah.
He just drew a Carrion Feeder. So was Sam's hand all land at that point?
He has a Carrion Feeder, and he can flashback his Lingering Souls this turn. Or he can flashback his Faithless Looting. Those are his two.
No, I mean, but he just drew that Carrion Feeder, so are the other cards, they both land?
Yeah. So what you're seeing here is another little interaction of this deck of Carrion Feeder plus landfall triggers to just grow that Carrion Feeder for free. So we sat to the Carrion Feeder, played a fetch land, got it back. Now he's going to bring it back again.
I mean, it's sort of like a crazy version of a Wild Nacatl or a crazy version of a Nimble Mongoose.
Yeah, and you can see, Hymn to Torak's a very powerful card, and it's, Sam had 2 cards in his hand. But given the type of weird ways that Sam has to generate card advantage, it's not as good here as it is against most. Him is generally very good against most fair decks. Sam's deck is sort of fair insofar as it's not combo killing you or overly disrupting you, but he has a lot of resilience to sort of these non-interactive 2-for-1s.
A lot of the reason he does, too, is that so much of his deck works out of the grave, in the same way that Hymn to Torak often doesn't do very much against Dredge, unless you get super-duper lucky. Sam's deck resilient here against Hymn to Torak. Not as frightening to consider hemming as Dredge would be.
And this board you're seeing right now is very common of Sam, and this is why I was mentioning that I thought the 1 copy of Pernicious Deed was potentially very valuable for Brian to have, because it would do a lot of work in sweeping up this board of Sam's knuckleheads.
Every time that I've watched Sam Black's deck play out, I've been very impressed by the way it interacts with other players, the quickness of its clock. I think that if you're looking for a new deck to play, get yourself a Walking Dead deck together and start playing it. See what you can do.
So,
third mana passes the turn. Abrupt Decays are in hand.
Did we just draw? Is that a Tragic Slip? Can't quite tell. I know he has 1 main deck slip in this deck.
We see all of the creatures come on in.
I assume we're going to see an Abrupt Decay here on a Tidehollow Scholar. Maybe we might have to kill the Carrion Feeder,
The Carrion
actually.
Feeder is a big clock. I mean, if he hits that Tidehollow Scholar, he gets his card back, but at the cost of only 1 life saved, because Sam will be able to sacrifice the Scholar to his Carrion Feeder.
Yeah, I mean, he has this hand of him and a bunch of targeted 1-for-1 removal, and it's just very hard for him to actually do anything that productive.
Sam does indeed sacrifice to make his Carrion Feeder a little bit bigger. Back to the hand comes the Shardless Agent that Tidehollow Scholar was holding in its grip.
Yep, and that should be 8 points there that came across. And you see Sam discard. Oh my god, he's discarding a Gravecrawler and a Bloodghast. Gets back and we're just sort of going off here.
Oh, look at that. Now, when Sam hit Brian's hand earlier, I believe he saw both Abrupt Decays.
Yep. The Scholars are back, and so is the Gravecrawler.
Jeez, look at that in play.
Now we need Pernicious Deed, and then we still need help after that.
I mean, a Pernicious Deed, actually, he's still dead on a deed.
No, he falls to 2, and then the Gravecrawler gets recast, and then he almost certainly dies the next turn.
Does he? Isn't he? If he's at 6 right now, isn't that 6 power otherwise?
Well, he could play a land here, indeed, I think, is the thing.
Oh, yeah, there we go, the Gravecrawler.
But even that doesn't really do very much.
Yeah, you're right, it's 2. I was misseeing that Gravecrawler as another Bloodghast.
Yeah. And this is exactly the type of way I expect Sam's deck to play out in this matchup. We're going to see Charlotte's Agent here.
He's like, well, what am I going to get? Oh,
there's the deed.
One of D. Look at him shake his head there.
Right.
That's it. Okay. 1 game down.
And that was quite convincing.
That was pretty impressive. I mean, I keep seeing Sam's deck do this. Now, Sam has won that first game. We've got a game that we play with our viewers at home every round in these top 8s, and that is the Star City Games premium giveaway that we do with our trivia challenge. Now, the way that this works is pretty simple. At home, what you want to do is you're going to have a trivia question posed to you. This round, it's going to be by Patrick Sullivan, my friend over here. And if you know the answer, tweet it with the hashtag SCG Premium. Amongst all of the answers that are correct, one person will be selected to win 6 free months of Star City Game Premium at random. You need to make sure you have that hashtag SCG Premium. We'll be doing the same kind of giveaway in the finals, but giving away a full year. So, trivia question, what do you got for us, Patrick?
I've been discussing at length. I think this matchup's, like I've said, quite bad for Brian. I just discussed at length. He has a couple cards that seem meaningful. He has 4 copies of Deathrite Shaman, and then he has 1 copy of a certain gold enchantment from Apocalypse. Hashtag SCG Premium with the answer of that gold enchantment that could help mitigate some of the boards that Sam builds up.
Yeah.
And a random person will be drawn for 6 free months of Star City Games Premium.
Yeah, so Patrick's question, what gold Apocalypse card is the card that we want, or that we would imagine that Brian Ruble wants to see in this matchup?
Seems like the most important card he has in his deck.
Absolutely. Now we're going to go to the sideboarding. Sideboarding for this matchup, looking at Brian Ruble's sideboard, good lord, he's got some anti-graveyard cards, 2 Nile Spellbombs.
Yep.
Now, when I look at Golgari Charm in his sideboard, I always want to believe it's like Rakdos Charm. I want to believe it's going to hit a graveyard, but no. No, the Golgari in this case are not going to nuke a graveyard. They want to cultivate a graveyard. So the Golgari Charm, -1/-1 to all creatures. Does that do anything relevant?
I mean, it does in the... If you saw the stats on Sam's creatures, you'd be like, yeah, he's got a bunch of 2/1s and the Carrion Feeder, so it kind of works. But in practice, no. All the creatures that this card actually kills have some way of recurring themselves or protecting themselves from -1/-1 effect. There is some argument that since it has some utility against some of Sam's draws and it can blow up a Goblin Bombardment, that maybe he's supposed to bring it in, but it's not going to be as impressive as you would imagine Golgari Charm to be against a deck with a bunch of 2/1s in it.
I think that the Golgari Charms, the way that they might be chosen by Brian if they come in, is if he decides, you know what, I've only got these cards, let's say 3-4 cards to bring in, and I'm taking out 7. Okay, well, let's put in Golgari Charm. Get your chance in.
Sure.
And Sam, well, other than the Nile Spellbombs, gosh, I mean, I almost wonder if you want to have Inquisition of Kozilek or Thoughtseize, just to take one of those critical cards like a Carrion Feeder, which does not have the recursion ability.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely cards, Carrion Feeder, Thoughtseize, Tide Hollow Scholar, that you would like to tag with discard, but so many of Sam's cards are either... You know, they either have flashback or they operate out of the graveyard somehow. That it's, you know, this is the problem with trying to find Sam's deck with conventional removal like this, is nearly everything doesn't quite work the right way.
Yep.
It has a little bit of utility, certainly, but it doesn't do enough to justify bringing in.
Now, you might think that the Submerge would be an excellent card to bring in against Sam's deck, since Sam does have Bayou to activate the Deathrite Shaman, but there's only 1 Bayou in the deck, and Sam doesn't have to search for it, nor do I imagine he's going to be wanting to find a little bit of life gain, so...
Yeah, and I also suspect a way that Sam may want to sideboard for this matchup, he has a copy of Perish in his deck. It wouldn't surprise me, and because he's going to be on the draw, and, you know, Brian's deck has Deathrite Shaman, so if they both have Deathrite Shaman, Brian has a lot more control about how that engagement works. Then he might actually just cut his Deathrite Shamans and bring in his 1 copy of Perish among other sideboard cards. Tarmogoyf's a big blocker, and between that and Deathrite Shaman, you might be able to maybe even a 2-for-1 or possibly even better out of that 1 Perish. Also present in Sam's sideboard, 3 copies of Dark Confidant. They just seem excellent in these against any sort of control matchup. Python Needle seems very good to me against... potentially against his suite of Planeswalkers. He has Zealous Persecution, Leyline of the Void, Surgical Extraction. It's possible he wants the 1 Oblivion Ring, again as another answer to Planeswalkers. 2 Go for the Throat's really only good against... I guess it's mostly for Tarmogoyf he would want to hear, but Tarmogoyf is, again, not a card he really even has to go out of his way to answer. A single Meekstone, probably don't want to hear, and a single Dark Blast, again, not at its best. So yeah, I do suspect, like if I was in Sam's position, I would probably cut the Deathrite Shamans rather, for probably the 3 Confidants, the Perish, and then maybe cut something like a Goblin Bombardment to get an Oblivion Ring in the deck as well. And maybe cut the tragic slip for Python Needle, something along those lines. But I would want the Confidants. I would probably want the Perish, and I don't think I would want Deathrite Shaman in my deck. But as I've said multiple times while covering this deck, I am no expert, so
Right.
I'm happy to just sort of speculate, but certainly not insist on what I think
Oh, absolutely.
Sam's path should be here.
I mean, one of the things to think about with this deck is that, as we've talked about this weekend, Legacy is a format that rewards knowledge of what has happened with a deck in a particular matchup. And I don't know about you, I've watched Walking Dead played. I have not played it, so it is a lot of conjecture on my part as well. We have a one game in the other match. Bug Delver, in the hands of Jack Fogel, has won the first game versus Joe Nozeki with Esper Blade.
Yep. And that's a matchup we used to see. There was definitely a time where Bug against Esper Blade a couple of years back, where those were two of the most important decks in the format.
Yeah.
I remember the Open that I top 8'd in Los Angeles a couple of years back, not the most recent one, but the one prior to that. I played against Esper Blade and Bug multiple times throughout that tournament.
You can see on the screen there Sam Black consulting Brian Ruble's deck list while he sideboards. And one of the things that these invitationals, these opens, these events that we broadcast, they all have in common is that the players get full access to each other's deck lists in the elimination rounds of the event. And I, for one, think this is a really good call for Star City Games to be doing this. It just really helps keep things like someone with, let's say more friends who are scouting or anything like that from having an undue advantage.
Or just someone with a smartphone against someone who doesn't have a smartphone.
Yeah.
Even that, yeah.
Yeah, and someone in the top 8 or shooting for top 8, they might say to themselves, you know what, I really am not excited about talking about my deck at all, or having you see it on camera and be resistant in a way. Well, if everyone gets the information at the end, not such a big deal.
Yep. And something I really enjoy watching Sam sideboard, because what he does is he shuffles all 15 and he just goes card by card and pulls out the ones he doesn't like. So when he's getting towards the end of the line, where at first you're obviously pulling out your obvious cards, and then as you get towards the end of the line there, you're really seeing your whole deck and you're looking at everything. So instead of having your mind made up ahead of time on how you're planning on sideboarding the matchup, you're sort of seeing your whole deck fanned out the whole way through. And so the last couple ins and outs, and especially with Sam's deck where, I'm speculating there's some cards he could want and I'm not sure what he would really want to cut for them, you sort of get a more complete view on how your deck is going to look.
Looking at Sam there, you can see his Simic emblem on his jacket lapel. I believe Sam Black is the second highest rated Planeswalker wearing the Simic emblem. Martin Juza is the unofficial Simic guild leader.
Sure. I lost my pin from Grand Prix San Jose, unfortunately. And I'm sure those things are actually going to be quite expensive in very little time, so hopefully I can dig mine up.
If you have not declared your allegiance to a guild,
I'm a proud member of the Boros Legion, in case there is any question.
Simic all the way. Amusingly, we have no representation here from any of the black guilds between us, so it's just Simic on my side, and I was actually expecting you to be a little Rakdosy, maybe Gruely.
Nah, I'm down with a little Law and Order.
Fair enough, I buy that. I mean, personality-wise, it fits you.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here in the booth with Patrick Sullivan. It's the Star City Games Open Series here, featuring the Invitational. The Invitational is in the books. Reed Duke. The repeated phrase this weekend has been well-deserved.
Yeah,
well-deserved, Reed Duke. And now we are on to the Legacy portion. This is the semifinals, second game. There have been 55 matches, 55 rounds, I should say, of Magic that have happened in the major events this weekend. 56 will be the next round where one of these players will be in the finals.
Yeah, and so I don't know. Maybe we can get some word from our spotter, but something hilarious must have gone on over there. Down with a little Law and Order and down with a Goblin Legionnaire. So
that's awesome.
They were comparing who knew digits of pi.
3.14159265 done.
Yeah, and Sam Black demolished him.
I am unsurprised. I bet you that's a game he's played before.
Yeah. Game in quotes, right? It's not really a game.
Deathrite Shaman on turn 1 for Brian. A very good card in this matchup. Turn 1 for Sam Black is Thoughtseize.
Yep. And Deathrite Shaman means Sam has to take a slightly slower pace to getting his graveyard action online. He has to try to overwhelm the Shaman or wait until Brian is tapped out to start doing some of his action here.
Look at those wild cards. Owls, whatever Goyfs are.
Selects Goyf over Strix and Abrupt Decay. And so now I assume we're gonna be busting out the Strix here.
In for 1.
Sam falling to 17. Cracking a Misty Rainforest. And we're going to see, I believe, a totally free, on the house, Baleful Strix. Just a free 1/1 Death Touch flyer.
Baleful Strix is a card that at the last Invitational, I was so impressed with it in the black-blue deck that AJ Soccer piloted in Legacy that I bought for that very day.
Yep. No, it was as long as the format's not too fast or too dishonest. This is a very sweet card, particularly in control mirrors. Help you can chain planeswalkers a little bit. Trade with Goyfs.
The Goyf trading was just nuts.
I believe he just drew a Strix off his Strix.
Oh.
No, it was a Charlotte's Agent. Even more free stuff.
Oh, man. I really do like these cards. I forget which is the is it Plane Chase?
Plane Chase, I believe.
Plane Chase. Some real cool cards in that set.
Yeah, it allows them to make some cards that are probably inappropriate power level wise for standard play that are totally fine in a Legacy format. Like how powerful would Strix be in a low power creature oriented format? It'd be insane.
Yeah.
How powerful is Charlotte's Agent? Extremely powerful. Probably don't want those cards floating around standard necessarily, but in Legacy, yeah, it's just another good thing you can be doing in a sea of good things you can be doing.
Sam Black, turn 2. Goblin Bombardment.
So, that's got to be something of a red flag for Brian, as it means Sam might be able to put together a turn where he uses his graveyard, something like Lingering Souls or Gravecrawler or something along those lines to get that Deathrite Shaman off the board, and then he can really start going about his business.
Goblin Bombardment first drawing note in the combo deck Fruity Pebbles way back in 1997.
It was a Enduring Renewal, Goblin Bombardment, Shield Sphere combo deck, if I recall.
That's correct.
Wow.
Sometimes it had other zeros as well. Often it had about 7 zero casting cost artifacts.
The Walker?
Yes, the Walker. Can see after the untap here, Brian Ruble with a lot of options. The Verdant Catacombs in Sam Black's yard represents a possibility for another mana if he wants it.
Charlotte's Agent for Nile's Spellbomb.
That is a nice one for him.
Yeah, and Sam just... It's going to be... I think Brian was contemplating this turn if he just wanted to abrupt decay that Goblin Bombardment straight away to, potentially protect his Deathrite Shaman. But certainly Charlotte's Agent into that Nile Spellbomb means he doesn't have to prioritize it nearly as much because he has another answer for graveyard stuff.
Remember to follow us on Twitter at SCG Live.
Looks like Sam has a Bloodghast plus a fetch land, which is going to allow him to do some mowing down this turn. He could get rid of the Strix and the Deathrite Shaman if he was feeling so inclined. I guess Brian can always respond. Oh, okay, Carrion Feeder. Carrion Feeder. Fetch land. Passes the turn back.
Brian Ruble untaps. He's got at least one land in his hand.
Looks like he brought in a Golgari Charm. And this is a pretty good spot for it, as he can get rid of one Carrion Feeder if he was feeling like it. He can also blow up that Goblin Bombardment.
One of the things that's really interesting about these charms, they've been seeing a lot of play all over the place, despite the fact that it looks like they have kind of fairly minor effects.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are seeing play because it's a mixture of utility, you know?
Yep.
You watch the Azorius charm in standard, and all 3 modes on that thing are
Yep.
being used at various times.
Rakdos charm in modern, showing some surprises to people.
Yeah, all 3 modes very good again.
Yeah. Rakdos charm, you're going off with your infinite creature combo deck? Well, just die.
You're dead. All right, Vendilion Click out of Brian inside of Sam's draw step. We look at Goblin Bombardment, Bloodghast, Deathrite Shaman. And because of that fetch land, I think we had to get rid of Bloodghast. I mean, the potential for Bloodghast Bombardment this turn to deal a whole ton of damage.
And now, even that Nihil Spellbomb being in play doesn't mean that that Sam has to pay much attention to it. Just with the trigger tricks, it can be a big deal.
Oh, we're getting rid of the second Bombardment. I guess we're planning on charming it next turn?
I think he's going to end up charming the Goblin Bombardment.
Yeah.
Now, if you notice that we're starting to...
Ooh, and Sam just drew a Cabal Therapy, which adds a ton of complexity this turn. And with him getting rid of that Goblin Bombardment with the Vendilion Click, it very strongly signals either Abrupt Decay or Golgari Charm. So...
Sam Black. Can see him there on the screen to your left, contemplating what to do. There's a lot of hate out there for him. Deathrite Shaman, Nihil Spellbomb.
Alright. Starts the action off with a Bloodghast.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Patrick Sullivan, watching
Howdy.
Game 2. Sam Black versus Brian Ruble. One of these players will be our finalist in this Open Series Legacy event.
2 Carrion Feeders are in. Since you can't block, you might as well attack. I assume we will be sacrificing our Bloodghast here.
Something has to feel rotten in Denmark when you see that block.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can use 2 different graveyard effects here to get that. We have a Deathrite Shaman and a Spellbomb if we don't care about cantripping that we can use to get that Bloodghast off the table, but this is a pretty rough exchange. He's giving up a lot of value if he's trying to run it like this.
I think he's just going to decay the Carrion Feeder.
Or Golgari Charm the Bombardment, perhaps?
Let's find out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options, actually.
Yes. Brian perhaps looking for a very specific dual land. He finds his Bayou. He's going to Abrupt Decay the Carrion Feeder. Okay.
Wants to keep the Shaman around for the long haul.
Not so bad for Sam necessarily now, though he can shoot down the click, or he can start getting, you know, the Bloodghast landfall triggers plus his Bombardment and really start wearing down Brian's board.
Yeah, like a thing to think about here is we're talking in some ways as though Brian Ruble is trying to hold Sam Black back, but Sam Black's life total is rapidly diminishing.
Yep, but I think he's going to make some very large inroads on Brian's board this turn. He's going to try to Nihil Spellbomb in response, and
Oof.
this feels like a misstep on Brian's part because Sam can simply sacrifice his land in response to get another landfall trigger and allows him to bring back his Bloodghast.
Okay, wait a second though. I don't think that. My bad. It's been a long weekend. That response there is just fine for bringing everything back to the Bloodghast. Yep. For half a second there, I thought that it was in response to the sacrifice, but no, it is not.
Yep. So now the Spellbomb resolves, and now Bloodghast is in play. And now he's going to finish off the Deathrite Shaman.
And now there are no graveyard effects in play for Brian Ruble anymore.
So now Sam is going to go search up another dual land, get back his Bloodghast. I assume we're going to shoot down the Vendilion Click here.
I mean, that is a flying lightning bolt every turn.
Yep. And Sam's really starting to stabilize this board, you know? So he's just got to be conscious of his life total here and let Bloodghast, Bloodghast turns all of his lands into very good draws, and then most of his spells are very good here too, so.
Sam Black's first real tournament finish was with a deck that was a Goblin Bombardment Goblin deck
So we're gonna,
for the car tournament at Worlds one year.
All right, Goblin, we missed with our Cabal Therapy. He shows that he has Golgari Charm, which I assume will be enough to compel us to get out of that, to flash back the therapy and get that charm, because Sam is leaning very heavily on this Goblin Bombardment to stabilize the board.
Deathrite Shaman of Sam's own. The question of killing that Vendilion Click can be held on to for another day. I don't think that Sam's afraid of a card like Giant Growth. He's seen Brian Ruble's deck list. Grabs it now.
Just to be on the safe side.
And Brian Ruble's hand empty, Sam Black's hand empty, Baleful Strix, and a Shardless Agent facing off against Deathrite Shaman and a Goblin Bombardment, but tons of graveyard effects potentially available to make any one card that Sam might draw be the equivalent of more than one.
Yep. And, all right, Abrupt again, the Bombardment.
That was a strong off the top.
But I mean, that was definitely a good draw for Brian. But that Deathrite Shaman gives Sam quite a bit of cushion, and he's in the sweet spot of land's not bad because it lets him get it back. His Bloodghast and a spell is a spell.
I mean, Brian Ruble's dealing 3 a turn, but if Sam wants to, he could gain 2 a turn.
Yep. So I think we just picked up a Faithless Looting there, and I'm not sure if we're willing to just mill ourselves for 2, or if we're going to save that for a spot where we actually have a hand.
Sam thinking it over. There are numerous flashback cards that he could draw that might be useful, but he's going to hang on just to see if he can get more value out of it.
Yeah, he's not playing Dredge. And did we just turn over a Jace there?
I didn't see what the color was. And again, Brian Ruble coming in for 3. Sam Black down to 3. Were it not for that Deathrite Shaman, he'd be a turn away from death, but he has one.
And there's Jace. And Sam, you can see doing the, like, yeah, of course you would draw Jace here.
Bounce the Shaman. Sam says, let's gain some life. He eats a creature. I can't tell what it is with the glare. Tarmogoyf, I think.
And arguably, this is actually not even bad for Sam, as he now has a greater spread of choices with his Faithless Looting.
1, 2.
He found a Go for the Throat and a Tide Hauler Sculler.
Go for the Throat could reduce the clock on Sam from 2 turns to 5 turns. Jace, however, is its own kind of clock.
Well, I'm not even sure we can go any of their guys because they're all randomly artifact creatures. So.
Well, that's a very good point. They are randomly artifact creatures. With a Tide Hollow Sculler and a Deathrite Shaman, Jace in play. The Jace could seal the deal here for Brian Ruble. 2 monster rips. I mean, in essence, those cards might be perhaps the best potential cards that Brian Ruble could have drawn in that.
You could argue Tarmogoyf might have been better, but yeah, those are the big draws there.
Well, the funny thing about it is, though, I mean, if Sam were to complain about this, one could just point to his Singleton Leyline of the Voids in the last match that helped him there.
We're looking at...
It all comes around.
Yes, it does.
Wasteland and Baleful Strix. I think that was a Baleful Strix. It is indeed. The owls are not what they seem.
So I guess Brian trying to figure out if his land is more valuable to, basically is it worth the Wasteland here? I think with that Faithless Looting in the graveyard, he definitely should use it because Sam has use for as much mana as possible.
Now, if you have been looking, or if you're Brian Ruble, you would know that with the Undiscovered Paradise in the yard for Sam and that Bayou in play, that is the only green activation that Sam has left in his deck for his Deathrite Shaman.
And he's going to hold back with the Starless Agent to protect his Jace. And the Strix knocks Sam down to 4.
Sam does have a Faithless Looting in the graveyard.
I'm a little bit surprised we weren't willing to use our Wasteland there.
Thoughtseize land and... And Sam's doing a little dance with his cards. Can't quite see. Goodbye Thoughtseize. Goodbye land. I think he might have another land in hand. The Bloodghast is in the yard. Is that correct? Is that...
Yes.
Okay. Crash. Down comes the land. Out comes the Bloodghast. Crack again. Sam goes to 3.
Can we pick up Lingering Souls somewhere along the way here?
Either
I thought it looked like 2 black spells.
I didn't see one. Maybe there's another Faithless Looting in the yard. Something in the yard that maybe we're missing.
It was a Grave Crawler.
Grave Crawler. There we go. Now this leaves Sam with the Bayou open to be able to drain Brian Ruble's life.
And Sam is still keeping his head above water here. I mean, he can... Deathbright Shaman can sustain the, trade the life back that Sam's losing on the Baleful Strix hits. And then he can actually build up a board where he can start attacking Jace. I mean, Bloodghast Gravecrawler is a great board to start attacking into Brian's board because you can just get those guys right back.
Looks like a Croson Grip from Brian Ruble has been drawn. I thought I saw a Thrun. There is one in the sideboard. I could be wrong about that.
Looks like a Grip, a Strix, and... is that Polluted Delta and...
Delta put into play. You can see 2 Strixes in the air. Baleful Strix number 1 comes on in, maybe with a friend.
Brian determining how much pressure he wants to put on Sam against how much he wants to leave back to protect his Jace. Attacking is a little rough right now because Sam just has that Deathbright Shaman. Brian's not really making any progress.
Now, one of the reasons we're speaking a little bit more quietly, if you're noticing this back in listening to the broadcast, it's partly because we're in a huge convention center hall in the LA Convention Center. But because almost no one is left from this long weekend, one of the things that's happened, we have an incredible amount of ability to have our voices reach all the way across the room.
Yeah, we got a couple people still left hanging on the rails. Some Star City people helping with the breakdown, but the hall is mostly empty.
Brian Ruble waiting to see what... or waiting for Sam to finish randomizing his deck before he continues with his play.
I think we're going to see Strix, and then we're going to hold up Croson Grip to shoot down the Tidehauler Sculler in case Sam makes some sort of alpha strike.
And Brian Ruble draws his card and goes in with 1 Strix.
Sam knocked down to 2, presumably going up to 4 now.
Passes the turn. Brian Ruble, it looks like he shuffled away his Wasteland. That would be a pretty okay card to get rid of that Bayou.
Yeah.
Since that turn where he got rid of the Wasteland, Sam has activated the Deathbright Shaman twice.
Sam in with his 2 zombies. Pretty tough creatures to block here.
Dead Strixes.
Yep.
And Sam just brings 1 back without any hesitation. Croson Grip on the Tidehauler Sculler. No responses. Split second doesn't let you.
And Sam with a go for the throw in his hand.
And
it's been better.
Yeah,
it's been better.
Well, it does kill Charmawave when it's out there, but
Deathrite. We're gonna unsummon the Deathrite Shaman. Go up to 6.
Now, Sam has gained 6 life since Brian has let that Wasteland go. That'd be 0 life right now if Sam had no...
And there is Thrun, the last troll.
There are no other ones, just him.
And now, having seen this card, I'm almost positive Sam is going to be bringing in his Perish now, if he hasn't already.
Sam draws. Very flourished draw. Slow reveal to himself. Let's see what you got.
Scholar shows a Jace.
Numero dos. Deathrite Shaman. I believe Sam is dead here if Brian pulls the trigger on it.
Yeah, I mean, he could say, for example, use his Jace to unsummon the Scholar, play a fresh Jace, unsummon the Deathrite Shaman, and then attack for lethal.
Yep. All he's got to do is pull the trigger. Sam has 1 card in hand. And they saw Brian there look to the side for a second. He can't consult the deck list during the game.
Yeah. Sam's list actually has basically 0 outs from this spot. And now it looks like Brian's going for it.
Yeah, Brian making the play that's going to cause this game to end.
Another unsummon, get rid of that.
Boom, Gravecrawler. Does not do the blocking.
Suspends ancestral vision for good measure. And now we are probably pretty safe to just attack.
Whoa.
Only in with the... Maybe he isn't aware the Gravecrawler can't block.
Whoa. And
Sam will keep playing. If you're not going to kill him, he'll keep going.
Draw. Will Jace brainstorm? Will he unsummon?
A lot of players would have just conceded there in Sam's spot, but Sam's going to make him do it.
Unsummons the Deathrite Shaman. Sam down to 4 life. If you're just joining us, this is Game 2 of the StarCityGames.com Open Series featuring the Invitational Weekend. We are in Legacy, the Legacy Open. Strix knocks Sam down to 3. Sam.
And Sam's in a position now where if he drew Lingering Souls here, he'd be right back in the game.
Absolutely. And Sam lays another Gravecrawler.
Looks like we've just drawn another... Is that an island? Just 2 lands in hand? Brainstorm into Goyf Jace.
Yikes. Those are some monsters. Well, he might not have done it before, but I believe that after he drops some Goyfs, he's probably going to attack with that Thrun finally. There it comes. Everybody. The whole team. Okay. Trade. Chump. Take 1. The agent is down. And Brian Ruble adds to the table. Goyf, Goyf. Goyf, Goyf.
Now we could...
Let's see what happens. This is a big draw step. Sam scoops it on up.
Sam given a couple extra draw steps there, but couldn't find... I don't know what he was looking for specifically. Maybe it was Perish.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, a parachute would have been excellent right there. Now, Sam did have, if I remember correctly, a go for the throat in his hand at the end of the game. And if you're wondering why he didn't go for the throat one of those Tarmogoyfs, I think that what he was looking at was it's not going to be sufficient for him to win the game to simply go for the throat Tarmogoyf. He's going to need to top deck a Perish. So save it in case he does top deck the Perish and still have a go for the throat left.
It's also just, Brian, even if he's aware that there's go for the throat in
Information?
the information, because you don't know if Sam's brought it in or not.
Yeah.
Plenty of, plenty of creatures that it doesn't kill, so I'm curious to see if Sam sideboards a little bit differently here now that he's on the play. And he went through a lot of cards in this deck without seeing a Lingering Souls, and it feels like one of his best cards in the matchup. I would be stunned if he actually cut one. But.
Okay, there's the sideboards once again. You can see on the left there, Sam's sideboard, and on the right, Brian's sideboard. But we have a little bit of information from the floor. Jack Fogel, 2-0 victory over his opponent, Joe Nizaki. Jack is playing Bug Delver, and Joe is playing Esper Blaze. That means that Jack Fogel is going to be in the finals versus one of these players with Bug Delver.
And it means no matter which deck advances to the finals here, we'll have a Deathrite Shaman mirror match.
It's true. Deathrite Shaman came to town and found itself in the finals against itself.
Yeah, his cheap threat interacts positively with your own graveyard and negative and attacks your opponents as well, and plays very well with fetch lands. So all the tools a card would need really to be a legacy hit, and we've seen it, revive some some archetypes that have sort of fallen by the wayside. We've seen Aggro Loam in the top 8 here that was playing Deathrite Shaman.
4 of the top 8 decks were playing Deathrite Shaman.
Yep.
I know that at the Grand Prix Chicago, I made a black-green rock deck, and 4 Deathrite Shamans was a big part of why.
Yep. So it's nice to see. Does not take a lot, really, for Legacy to have these big shakes, big tremors to the metagame.
A part of it is you've got these hugely, hugely potent combinations that happen. Cards that in conjunction with each other kind of explode in quality to approaching infinity. And you see something like Vision Charm in the main deck of one of these top 8 players in the form of Andrew Shugart's Dreadstill list. And why Vision Charm? A card that's had play in the past, but is basically pretty weak. Well, it serves as a 5th sort of stifle to get his Phyrexian Dreadnought into play. Now, is that card a card you would just jam into tons of decks? Not at all. Not at all. But as a strange combination card, Legacy has so many cards, you never know what's going to happen when you explode together with these crazy, crazy cards.
I mean, look at what Goblins is. It's 15 years of just weird Goblins. It's not all from the same block or the same 2 blocks. It's from all over the place. Sam is going to keep.
This is going to be our final game of the semifinals. One of these players is going to move forth and have to fight against Jack Fogel's Bug Delver.
Brian here, strongly considering a mulligan. You see on next to Brian Ruble is David Zimmett, one of the Southern California area's finest judges.
Excellent. And the game begins. Fetching a bad land.
Sam Black and Gerard Fabiano are Badlands, Scrublands masters. Whether it's Gravecrawler, Goblin Bombardment, or Grim Lavamancer, Hero Blade Hold. 2 stalwarts of the format.
It's funny.
All right, we're going to leave with the Thoughtseize, and we're going to see what hand he was looking at mulliganing. Golgari Charm, Tarmogoyf, Ancestral Visions, and 4 lands. My suspicion is we're going to be taking Ancestral Visions out of this hand, as Sam's deck is very good at playing an attrition game. Unless that Tarmogoyf is... Unless Sam is really soft to this Tarmogoyf, I think we were going to scoop that Visions. Because these games will not be particularly short if Brian's putting up resistance. That Ancestral will have time to fire. And
boom.
Sam takes it. Land off the top for Brian. I'm surprised Brian was thinking about that hand to mulligan for so long. I mean, that hand's not great.
It could be that a single Thoughtseize might make it much weaker.
And yeah, no, Sam's hand is 2 Cabal Therapies as well, so we're gonna.
Oh yikes!
We might start to really go to work on that hand.
Cabal Therapy, one of my favorite cards in Magic. Faithless Looting.
Do we have the Bloodghast to back this all up? Tragic Slip, Goblin Bombardment. Carrion Feeder, and it doesn't look like he has any of his graveyard value cards here. Get rid of a, looks like we're getting rid of a redundant, not redundant, but not necessary removal spell. And we're going to discard a Cabal Therapy as well.
Cabal Therapy to the yard. And that was a slip. Cabal Therapy.
Almost
naming
certainly.
Tarmogoyf.
Tarmogoyf, almost certainly, yeah.
Goodbye, Tarmogoyf.
And he sees that there's been a land drawn.
That charm remains.
But Sam can pick that out of his hand when he gets around to it.
A Wasteland from Brian Ruble. Land go.
So, yeah, Brian's opening hand wasn't ideal, and that discard took away just the only parts of it that had any merit. So that Ancestral and that Tarmogoyf.
Sam Black lays a land and passes. He does have that looting in the yard, but I think he's waiting for something more useful to discard. He likes his cards. Shardless Agent off the top.
This is a big one. Oh, wah, 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 wah.
Thumbs up. Which mode?
Would you like to destroy enchantment, give all things -1/-1, or regenerate?
He's like, I don't know if I want to cast any of them.
So, Shardless Agent, that was certainly on the low end of cards that could be turned over there. I guess Abrupt Decay would have been similarly bad.
Oh, that's a... You know, it was a really positive rip there for Brian, but it did not come to fruition.
No.
Spin the wheel.
All right. I think Sam is just looking for a little more.
And we got the Faithless Looting now from the graveyard. Maybe he finds that there's enough garbage in his hand.
Yeah. Found a Bloodghast.
Oh, how lucky. How lucky.
And I assume this other Cabal Therapy we don't really need.
I mean, he does know there's a lot of land in Brian's hand.
Baleful Strix. And Sam's got to be careful here because he's playing this game in such a way. He's ripped his hand apart, but a Jace off the top would just be devastating.
Okay. Brian has drawn a second Wasteland. In for 2.
And
will he start pulling the triggers? I
think I would prefer to wait one turn on this Wasteland, so if you draw a cantrip, you can, brainstorm, and you could brainstorm and potentially cast Jason the same turn.
Goodbye to the Scrubland. Bad Scrub. Those are the kinds of lands we see from Sam Black.
Sam still not having found a land to trigger his Bloodghast.
That was a rough. And there goes the Go for the Throat, staring down an army of artifact creatures.
But there's Deathbright Shaman, and now Sam's going to have a lot more mana to work with.
There's the card you were talking about.
There's the Brainstorm. How's that fall in queue?
Those of you who are looking for other prognostications can consult Patrick Sullivan's prognosticator services.
No, it only counts if there's a Jason in this top 3.
You know there's gonna be. If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Patrick Sullivan. We're watching the final game of this semifinal match. The final game of the semifinals.
Yeah, there's an Ancestral Vendilion Click and Golgari Crozan Grip. It's really choking on a lot of this enchantment and artifact removal. That's not only is it just not, those aren't very good cards to draw, they're also causing problems with his cascades.
Yeah, and one of the other things too is that they have to sit in his hand until there's a target, which means that they have to sit in his hand while Sam could tear them out.
Yep. So Brian gonna wasteland Sam, but Sam has some resistance against it.
Ancestral Vision, suspend for Deathrite Shaman here, turning this into an 11-turn clock. But, oh, never mind, the Bayou's gone. Deathrite Shaman here, I guess, just basically being mana acceleration amongst other things, and the potential to start doming Brian.
Sam has still not found a land to get these Wilgas back.
You can see that look on Sam's face. He's like, really? Really? A Crave Crawler.
one land, and just this wellspring opens up. It's not even.
Oh boy! See the Parish discarded, and Deathrite Shaman removes a land from Brian's graveyard to cast another Deathrite Shaman.
It's not even about the wastelands. It's not even like Sam is stuck on mana. He just actually just needs a land for a landfall trigger. That is it.
And we see both of these creatures come in. Take 3. Sam drops to 8. The suspend on the Ancestral Vision did not tick down. I believe that with the way that the rules currently work, that's the way it's going to stick.
So we're looking at, again, no land off the top. A big risk here. I mean, Brian wants to get rid of that Goblin Bombardment because if Sam sticks it, he can have a huge turn, but there's a risk giving Sam a draw for a land.
I mean that.
Oh, he found it. And he has a Lingering Souls too, which provides so much blocking.
I mean, I wouldn't have minded getting rid of that Lingering Souls if I'm going to get rid of something.
Now we really start to
boom
claw back into this. Gets rid of a Golgari Charm, sees a Crozan Grip, and now you can see Sam springing into action. He knows that Crozan Grip doesn't matter. Now he can start turning this game around. I mean, we can cast a Lingering Souls, and then we have so much. We have access to so much blocking now. We can cast our Gravecrawler over graveyard and actually just start hitting.
He's trying to decide if he wants to fetch again. Each one of these fetches is a very precious commodity.
Yeah.
He does decide, take the grip now just to get the maximum use out of this land.
And to me, I believe this is some indicator of Brian having not sculpted his game plan correctly this game with the amount of enchantment and artifact he brought in. I mean, he's sitting on 2 disenchant that he can't cash in, and he clicks Sam and has to take a Goblin Bombardment out of the hand because he can't even afford the bombardment to be in play for 1 turn. Too much damage gets done. And so the sideboard cards he's brought in have been, they ruined a Cascade off that Charlotte's Agent. They've been sitting in his hand when really any additional pressure would have been possibly enough to put just Sam out of this game. And now
Lingering Souls on top of all of it. Look at suddenly the fortress.
Yep.
That's
all. That was just a land. That's all that was. You drew a land. And now this happened.
And he remembers to tick down the vision, and Brian Ruble's like, good turn, good turn.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Bayou. Fetched out.
We still have a Lingering Souls in the graveyard, too. And now, we're in a spot where, I mean, what are Brian's good draws here?
Pernicious Deed.
Deed's very good.
And it's
But like,
Jace is mediocre.
yeah, Jace's name in particular. That is the best indicator of. It's like, how are you doing in a game of Legacy? The question is, what happens if you drew Jace here? How good would it be? The answer is not that good.
It'd be okay.
You're probably in some trouble.
Yeah. Oof.
Passes.
And Sam untaps. Is that another fetch? In with the creatures who cannot block and cannot truly die.
Yep.
In with the spirits.
And Sam realizes that he doesn't have all day here because the threat of Pernicious Deed is there, so he's got to try to shut the door here as quickly as possible.
If you think about the damage he's presenting, that's 2, 4, 5, 6, plus the Deathrite Shamans is 10 if he wants to go that direction.
Yep. A flashback on our Lingering Souls.
And that's mostly just to be defensive at this point.
We're going to hold up our 2 Deathrite Shamans.
And Sam passes the turn.
Just drew a Charlotte's Agent.
And let's see, spin the wheel.
Yeah. Abrupt Decay, which is okay, I guess. Probably going to tag one of these Deathrite Shamans.
Take that. And he uses it to make a mana.
And makes another mana, and I guess we're going to probably go for the throat. The Vendilion Click.
Gain
he gained 2.
life.
Sorry, I thought he moved 2 lands out of the graveyard there.
Gain 2 life with the surviving shaman. We see a double block here.
And this is just Sam trying to protect himself from the worst case scenario, which is Brian drawing Pernicious Deed. It just leaves Brian with less of a board if he makes that trade there.
Yep. That Ancestral Vision would be at a 1 right now if it had not been for that Forgotten.
And I mean, it's like, I think it's, if Brian draws a blank, he's very likely to die on Sam's next turn, which would be huge if that game ended with that Visions at 1 counter.
Blocking has got to feel so gross right now if you're Brian Ruble.
Yep.
You're like, okay, a Blood Gas gets blocked and I kill it and all you have to do is lay a land and it comes back.
I put my Baleful Strix in front of 1/4 of the Lingering Souls, I guess. That's,
Brian Ruble is now bloodied though. He goes to 10 life.
Yep.
Bloodied, that's just kind of a fun word that some people call it when you are at 10 life or less, so that cards like the Blood Gas can have haste.
We're going to flashback our Faithless Looting. Discards another Bloodghast. And Bloodstain Mire. And there's a Delta, and they all come back.
Boom, boom, boom. All the hits. Brian Ruble here. Running out of time.
Now, Sam had to contemplate there momentarily because he wants to get his Gravecrawler back, of course, but he also doesn't want to give up a landfall trigger in the event that Brian were to rip Pernicious Deed. He would still be able to get his Bloodghast back and attack right away.
And down to 1, should be 0. I really like that measure you just said. How's the game going? Well, if you draw a Jace and put it into play, would you still feel bad?
Yeah. Although we still have Pernicious Deed here as a big draw. There's a Nile Spellbomb. A little late.
A little late to the party.
We're going to finally blow up Sam's graveyard.
With many less than relevant cards in it.
Yeah, Sam's... What's the damage already been done?
Drawing a card. Hoping to find something better. That's not so great. Can Brian survive this turn? It won't take... There's a whole bunch of cards Sam could draw to actually just, I think, end it here.
So he's just counting to see, well, if you block these guys, how much damage are we looking at? Alright, go for the throw on Vendilion Click. And I believe this will usher in a lethal attack.
Brian Ruble
And there it
There's
is.
the hand.
Sam Black, 2-1, advancing to the finals.
Yeah. Now Sam Black, our other finalist.
Zombie.
That's right. The Walking Dead is the #1 show on TV right now with one of the most coveted demographics, and it's also going to be here in the finals.
Yes.